and welcome to Author to Author. My name is Tara Hill Starks, the author of Grandma, I Got This. I am so excited today for our book discussion and our writers chat. There's going to be some good discussion about self-publishing and promoting a book. We're going to be talking about literacy and our Black youth and getting to know me as an author as well as my special guest, Dr. Beverly Boone. And before we get started, please feel free to post a question or a comment throughout this segment because we would love to hear from you. All right. So a little bit about me. I am from North Carolina, Asheboro, North Carolina, and I have an undergraduate degree, a business degree from Catawba College, and I attended North Carolina A&T State University for my teaching credentials, and I attended Liberty University for my MBA. All right. And after college, I went to work for Energizer Battery Company in operations management, and I've worked for several pharmaceutical companies, Abbott Laboratories, which is now Pfizer, and Banner Pharma Caps. Okay. So then I decided to become a teacher. All right. I was for 10 years a business and technology teacher. And I then got married and I had a baby. And so now I'm here in Myrtle Beach. I'm working for Horry Georgetown Technical College as the director of testing. All right. And last but not least, I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. All right. So enough about me. I now welcome Dr. Beverly Boone.
Hi, Tara.
Hi, Dr. Bev. How are you doing?
Here. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. And so I am going to read a little bit of your bio, if I may, about Dr. Beverly Boone. She is an award-winning educator, author, and speaker. Her work focuses on sharing positive and inspiring messages. Family and Friends is one of a collection of Christian short stories included in her soon-to-be-released book, Let the Children Speak. Recognized as a South Carolina Educational Television American Graduate Champion for her commitment of time, skills, and resources to make sure that young people succeed, Dr. Boone continues to work with communities and is available for workshops and speaking engagements. Dr. Boone received her doctorate degree from North Carolina State University in Educational Administration and Policy Analysis, and she is also the founder of Storytelling Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating and sharing original stories that impact social justice. All right, so I welcome my Sarah, I welcome my friend, and I welcome my former co-worker and the author of many books, Dr. Beverly Boone. Yay!
Thank you. And let me congratulate you on your wonderful book. I think you just did a terrific job with Grandma. I Got This, and it's much to be celebrated. And thank you again for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And is it okay if I call you Doc Bev? Because that's how I address you, Doc Bev.
That's fine. That's fine. That's good. That's good.
All right. So, Doc Bev, we are both here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and we are not from here. As I just said, as I just spoke of, I'm from North Carolina, Asheboro, North Carolina. Where are you originally from?
Actually, not too far from Asheboro. I'm from Troy, North Carolina, but I spent my adult life in Raleigh, but grew up in a small town. We used to visit Asheboro to do big time shopping because you all had more stores there than we have in Troy. So I ended up here after I retired as a principal and a teacher in North Carolina. I came here. I just kept working.
Okay. All right. So, South Carolina, it's pretty cool. I moved here because of my husband. He was transferred here. His job transferred here. And so, we have nice weather and, we share our many walks that we go on. And today, it's kind of nice. It's an overcast, but it's a nice place.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. I think it's amazing how much we have in common because practically your neighbor as far as
Yeah.
growing up. And then we're both sorority sisters, and we have both enjoyed working at the community college. At some point, I was there and enjoyed it very much. That's how we met, actually.
Yeah, that is how we met. And then you told me that you were an author. And then, I got some of your books, and you just, our friendship blossomed from there. So I appreciate you and I thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you even more.
So, speaking of writing, um, I started my journey as a writer, after my grandmother passed away in 2016. I wanted to figure out, I was thinking about how could I share the memories of her, right? How could I share, this amazing person that she was? Because, she loved everybody. She would give her last. She was easy to forgive. I mean, she was just a great person, and that's what she taught me. And so, she was just a good person, and not a perfect person, but just a good person. And so I just wanted to share that with everyone, and that's how I started, on my writing journey. And you kind of helped me, with that. I gave you my manuscript, and you helped me with edits and so forth. So, I do appreciate that. And that's how my journey began.
Well, I think you're well on your way to a very successful journey. Writing is something you have to love because it's hard work.
It is.
And pursuing it is not something you do lightly because it can be a very lonely job, but it's
Yeah.
rewarding if you love it. And I
Yes.
think you do.
Yes, yes, yes. With your help, I do. And like you said, it's not easy. A lot of people think that writing is just easy. You have a story to tell, of course, but you go through like 1,000 edits before you even think it's right.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the challenging thing about writing. And when I taught writing in the public schools, I would always tell the students that writing is about rewriting.
Hmm.
The first time you write is just the beginning. The more you rewrite, you begin to get ideas, and you don't even know where these ideas are coming from
Right.
because the characters take on a life of their own. Whatever
Yeah.
you create in your mind has the power to live outside of your mind. So
Right.
the writing will create a life of its own, but you have to give it something to work with. You have to
That's
get
right.
in there and start putting those ideas down on paper. And sometimes you feel like nothing is happening, but something is happening. It is forming.
Yeah.
Michelangelo said that the way he created the sculpture of David, people would say, "How did you do that?" And he said, "Well, it's pretty easy. I just sculpted everything away that did not look like David." And
Mm.
that's kind of a challenging
Right.
to do. But in his mind, he knew what he had to do, and he just kept doing it.
Right. Dr. Bell, tell me, how did you start writing?
I've always wanted to write. I think that my personal philosophy is that God puts inside of our heart what he wants us to do.
Mm.
And it will nag you and haunt you, and it will
Mm.
not let you rest until you do it. So when I
Mm.
was a little girl, before I could even read, I was scribbling and pretending to write letters to friends and family. I think in one of my books you probably read where I did the letter to an aunt that visited when I was very young. I had
Mhm.
no idea that I was actually scribbling and nobody could read it because my mother mailed it and pretended also that people could read my scribble. But I've just always wanted to write. I never understood it because no one around me wanted to write. But, God doesn't leave you out here wondering what you should do. He puts it in your heart. And I
Yeah.
just always wanted to do it. But it took a while for me to actually have the courage to put my ideas down and publish them.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and that is so true. When you say courage,
Yeah.
that's so true. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But you have to follow your heart, and you have to have the courage to step on out there. And so that's what I did.
Yeah, and very successfully. Courage too, because once you get it published, you're now saying to the world, "Okay, critique it."
Yeah.
And as long as it's your little private thing, you are the audience. But once you say, here, world, here's what I'm thinking, and you have to do that. You have to say, this is who I am, and hopefully I can bring you in on the human experience that I'm sharing. And most of the time, that's the writing that we most love.
Yes, yeah. And so, this is my first book, and I'm working on my second book. But Dot Bev, you have written many other books, right? And so two books that, I really enjoy, two of your books that I really enjoy because I have several of them. But the two that I enjoy most are Sometimes the Hardest Things. And then, I just cannot leave out Life is Like a Tootsie Roll Lollipop. This book right here is just amazing. Um, like how did you think about writing Life is Like a Tootsie Roll?
Well, first of all, thank you for your enthusiastic support. I really love that. I can't thank you enough. I wrote Life is Like a Tootsie Roll Lollipop over a period of time. I didn't just sit down one day and say, I'm going to write about my childhood experiences. But I lived in a community at the time where the newspaper would accept short stories if they were submitted, and they thought they were good enough. So I started writing these experiences and submitting them to the newspaper. So most of the stories were printed in the newspaper in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And then I decided, why don't I just take some of these stories, add more experiences, and just create a little book? And that's what I did. Childhood experiences shape us, and every story is true in the little book. And I do believe, like Wordsworth says, that the child is father of the man. The experiences we have as children have everything to do with how we feel and think about the world as adults. So I thought it would be nice to share that. Plus, my sister and I grew up together, and there's a picture of us at the end of the book. And
I
I
know
want
it's so cute. It's like you were the cutest little thing.
well, I don't know about being cute because we did the best we could.
So cute in the same dresses and everything, just so cute. But this book, like you said, all of the stories are true, and and it had a lot of losses, of course, in the book. But my favorite, and y'all, I cried. I cried when I read Sharing the Bond of Friendship, right? And it just talks about your best friend. It talked about your best friend, and then it talked about how you gained another best friend, and those two people, just didn't bond. And
Yeah.
then, I guess, you stated years later, that you saw these people, and that one of the ladies, she became a nurse and she got married and she moved away. But then the other one, the real feisty one, the one that would challenge you and tell a joke in a minute, she passed away at a very early age. And so, I don't know. I guess, I have friends, I do have a best friend. And so, I do cherish, friendship. And this story was just, it was just so, it was very nice, and it just made me go to tears.
That's really interesting because, that's what you want to do. You want to reach out with your
Mhm.
experiences and connect with somebody else's experiences. And, we don't feel as alone in this world when somebody else says, yeah, I can identify with that. But those friendships established how we feel
Yeah,
about friendships even now. And the lesson, of course, that I learned about friendship is that you have to develop your friends one on one. You
yeah,
can't bring other people into the mix and they bond. Sometimes it happens,
yeah,
but it makes it difficult when you want everybody to be best friends.
yeah.
But it's a process. We still don't understand how people become best friends, really. We just know it happens.
Right. And then, of course, the sometimes the hardest thing, I understand, it is part of a series, but this is great for this is great for churches and for organizations, and
Yeah.
because you have the story, and then you have scripture behind it, as well as a lesson plan for discussion and activities or whatever. And so I purchased these from you for JJ. And so for the audience out there, these books would be wonderful. So I encourage you, to purchase these, because these books are wonderful, like I said, for organizations and churches as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. You've always been a great supporter of mine from the time that I met you and you found out that I write books. You said immediately, I'll take all of them. And I was like, wow, this lady is awesome. And I really did, because usually I encourage people to check out the books, but you just overwhelmingly said, I'm getting these books for my son. And one thing I could say about the group of books, the 5 books that I wrote for a pastor actually in North Carolina, he was looking for someone that could take the message that he was giving to his greater congregation, and he wanted the same themes developed for his church ministry. So he gave me 5 verses from the Bible that he planned to preach on 5 Sundays. And I really took those verses and tried to modernize them and create stories that could capture the theme. And also, uh, I think all of my books are family books. They're not meant for the parent to give the book to the child and tell the child to go off and read the book. They're meant to bring families together. And I
Right.
put activities at the end of those 5 books because I wanted to make sure that parents, teachers had a way to start the discussion, because a
Right.
book without understanding is not really a good book. You have to understand why. What does
Yeah.
the story mean? And that's what these 5 books do. They're under the title of Let the Children Speak, and there are five
Mhm.
books, and they all capture strong themes of family, friends, love of God.
Right. And speaking of, strong things, so my book, Grandma, I Got This, there's a lot of things in
Yeah.
there, things, good character, lesson things, and so in my book, my favorite part of my book is whenever Grandma says, give to others. Grandma says, giving to others fills your heart and theirs. Grandma, I got this. I give my smile, I give my help, I give my time, I give to others. And so the reason why, this part is really, um, it, I really like this, is because, my grandmother, she was a giver. Let me tell you, she would give her last. She would give her last to people, to anybody. And, she would give her last to me. And so, I truly think that giving to others fills our hearts and theirs, you know?
Yeah.
And, giving is not, only about just giving something tangible. It's about giving people a smile, giving them a hug, giving them, help, you know, giving them your time. And so, with my book, this is really the best part, for me, because I love to give. I love to give. I love to give to others, and it just warms my heart. And I hope others are warmed by it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see the impact that your grandmother had on your life and still has on your life, really,
Yes.
because you're still giving. You're giving opportunities by hosting this show. You're giving by supporting other authors. You're giving by sharing the story. We cannot deny how important it is to put these positive images and people in front of children, because you are definitely a direct a product of what your grandmother taught you, and now you're teaching your son. You and your husband are passing that right to your child. And
Yeah.
we all know that the parents are the most important educators in a child's life.
Right.
So
That's true.
congratulations.
That's true. I like the title. Life is like a Tootsie Roll lollipop. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, that's an interesting question because, earlier I said that if you just start writing, um, something will happen inside of you and you'll wonder, where is that coming from? And
Mhm.
I wrote the story before I had the title. And the reason why it turned out that way is because I was talking about a real person, a child that I knew when I was 6 years old. And if you
Mhm.
read the first story in Life is Like a Tootsie Roll Lollipop, which has the same title, as I was going through thinking about his experiences, he really did have a tough life. He really did live with his dad. He really did have some troubles along the way, but I absolutely adored him. And he
Mhm.
adored me even as children. And when I was writing the story, it just came to me that life is like a Tootsie Roll lollipop. That's the best way I can explain it because as he's going through his hard times, the mother is sharing with me, your favorite candy is a Tootsie Roll lollipop, and life is like
Oh,
that. You got to get through that hard part of that candy, and then
yes,
there's a soft sweetness in the
yes,
middle. And that is so true of
yes,
life. We have to take some very hard experiences in life, but we believe that God has a sweetness waiting for us. So the
yes.
title came as I immersed myself in the memory of my sweet, sweet friend. The title just came into my head. In fact, when I was writing these stories, I didn't know I was writing a children's book. I thought I was just writing books for adults. But
Mhm.
people have a way of saying what kind of author you are.
Mhm.
And when it was published, everybody said, "Oh, it's a children's book." And it's really a family book that
Mhm.
children and adults can relate to. And I think I
Yeah.
shared with you that I write a lot of different things. I write plays for domestic violence, I write
Mhm.
plays for anti bullying, and of course, children's books too, which
That's
I,
right.
yeah.
That's right. And and I encourage everyone, this cute little book right here, it'll bring back childhood memories, and it is just a sweet book. Very sweet book.
Thank you so much.
So Doc Bev, so you and I, we have been on this journey together of self-publishing, right? You have used Author House for most, if not all, of your publishing, and I went with Tell Well Talent. Um, and it was an experience, right?
It
It was
is.
an experience. So tell me about the Author House. It was one of um one, it was in the pool of my choosings. Of course it was there, and then of course I went with Tellwell, but with Author House, and just with all publishing experiences, there's negatives and there's positives. So
Yeah.
share with me your experience.
And I'm interested in your experiences also.
Okay.
I think that we'll find very similar
Right,
experience.
right.
A lot of these self-publishing companies have many smaller companies under the umbrella. Author
Mhm.
House is one. Many publishing companies that you see advertised are really owned by Author House. So sometimes we're involved in a publishing company and you think it's not Author House, but when you do the research, it is.
Right.
Um, Author House at one point when I started, and I think it probably is like number two, but like I said, they have many companies underneath them. Self-publishing is what you do when you want to get your book published.
Mhm.
It takes a little bit more effort to really find a publisher to back your book. It can be done. I don't know of any writer that does not want to have one of the big publishing companies say, "I'll publish your book. I'll put it out there for you. I'll pay for the marketing. We'll
Mhm.
make sure Barnes and Noble puts you up right up front in their window." That is the goal. But if you want to get your book out quickly, you don't want to go through numerous rejection letters before you get that yes, then you go through self-publishing. It They will do what they say. I think you found that to be true. They give you a la carte menu of
Right.
what you can buy, and the what you purchase is what they will do. If you do not purchase it, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So there's an investment that you make initially.
Hmm.
And what you want to do is kind of weigh how much money you're going to put into just getting the book published, because, hey, what good is a book that nobody knows about? So you have to think about, I need money for marketing also.
Right. Because I remember whenever, I came up with this book idea and I talked to you or whatever. And so that's the one thing that you kind of warned me. You was like, Terry, don't get caught up in just giving your money away, because like you said, it all depends on, the money,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
the money piece, the money, how much are you willing to put in, because with self-publishing companies, at least with my experience with Tellwell, they did everything for me because it was right there. I didn't have to, find an illustrator. I didn't have to find an editor. Everything was right there. They
Right.
they took me through the whole process. And
Right.
so that's, one of the pros about it, is that they do everything. But again, you have to pay them, right? You
That's
have to pay them, right?
that's true. A lot of advantages in that. I do not allow them to do everything for me. I like to find my own illustrator. And you can go to guru.com. That's how I have found both illustrators for my books. I just like, to connect with my own illustrator, but there is
Yeah.
absolutely nothing wrong with going through the illustrators that they have at self-publishing. They're great illustrators. And I normally do my own editing also, because I found that they charge so much for that.
Mhm.
And when I get it back, I still see where they have not corrected all of the mistakes. So I
Mhm.
normally, I had a good friend that would work with me. She wasn't an English teacher, but some people are just very, very proficient in finding
Right.
mistakes. And she would do that because I have a nonprofit foundation also. So she would volunteer and work with me. And that's part of what we would do. So, and I would always caution people who are self-published, have a budget.
Mhm.
And if you're not careful until you actually see that you are making money, if you're not careful, you will end up spending far more money in getting your book published if you don't have a plan to
Mhm.
promote the book, to sell the book.
Right. Right.
Um, so
And so,
it's good.
you're right. I'm sorry. And
That's
so, speaking of promoting and marketing, um, you know, sometimes the question is, is it necessary? Yes, it's necessary if you want your books to be sold, if you want to be known, if you want to be out there. But really, Doc Bev, and correct me if I'm wrong, the work starts after the book is finished, the
You're right.
because you have to promote it, and it's hard work. And people, once again, they don't understand it is hard work promoting and marketing a book, because you're trying to get your face, you're out there, your book out there, you're on social media. And I had never, and I know this may sound crazy, but I have never been on social media prior to, never ever,
Yeah.
prior to me writing this book. And some of my friends, they pick at me. They were like, you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, and I was like, yeah, don't really want to, but got to, and so just trying to, not be so overwhelmed with, putting your stuff out there. And yeah, it's some work that has to be done.
Yes, because you're trying initially when you write a book, your audience is going to be, in your potential clients or persons who will buy the book are going to be your family, your
Hmm.
friends, your church, maybe your neighbors. So once you have saturated your book with the people who are closest to your life, then
Hmm.
you have to think, okay, how am I going to get this book to people that I am not connected to on a
Mhm.
personal level?
Mhm.
That's when the marketing becomes crucial. And that's when you have to really use all of your resources. And that's why these marketing companies charge so much money. But if you
Right.
look at all the books that you have in your home and all the books that I have in my home, I have never met the authors. So how did I learn about the books? I
Right.
learned about the books because they were marketed on television, radio, or
Mhm.
magazines, or maybe just on the internet or whatever. But
Mhm.
marketing is a big piece of it. And generally, to get beyond your initial relationships, you have to really look at expanding marketing.
Yeah. And you're so right, because when I did my first book signing, which was in Asheville, North Carolina, at the Our Daily Bread Soup Kitchen, I I have had the support, and I truly am blessed, and I truly appreciate Asheboro and the surrounding areas. When I had my book signing, people came out, in the area,
Mhm.
the surrounding areas, High Point, my sorors, they really supported me. My friends there, and family. And you're right, and it's kind of it's hard. It's harder for me down here in South Carolina, and I guess it's because I'm not from here. I've reached out to people and to other organizations, and they're really not giving me the time of day. And so that's another thing, that Bev, that I had to learn, is that everybody's not going to like your book. Everybody is not going to want to hear about Grandma I Got This. And so you have to be strong enough to say, okay, it's not for everybody, and so you just move on. And so that's just one of the things. You get denied a couple of times, and that's okay, but then you move on.
And I think everybody, if they give themselves an opportunity to really hear your book, see your book, and see it's a quality book, because sometimes self-publishing authors get a bad rap. And that bad rap is that your book is not of the quality of a
Right.
book that comes from one of the publishing companies, that mega publishing companies. And that's not always true. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes it is true, but it's not true about your book, and it certainly isn't true about my books, and it's not true about most
Mhm.
self-publishing authors, because I think we try even harder to make sure that our books are quality books.
Right.
But you're right. Moving beyond those relationship persons, because you don't want to just oversaturate your book with them. They can only buy it one time.
Right.
Uh, Maybe twice if they really are trying to, help you out. But
Right.
challenge is, even though the books are on Barnes and Noble and retailers, sometimes people think, oh, you're making all this money with your book. Um, and
Mhm.
I have had experiences where people expect me just to give away my books.
Yeah.
They think that because I wrote the book, I can get the book free. You
Right.
may have come across that too.
Right. Oh yeah, because people are like, "Oh, you're rich now." No, I'm not rich. The average author makes $10,000 a year, and that's covering what you have already paid. And that's not even all that you have paid out. You know what I mean? So no,
Yeah,
you don't get rich. It's just the fulfillment. Of knowing that you have done something. For, like you said, a purpose that God has for you,
yeah.
that God has
That's
for your plan, right? And
that's
so,
it.
I've done book signings, and I'm hoping to do more, as it gets nice and as we get through this
Yeah,
COVID period.
yeah.
And, I'll continue to do my social media, whatever. But I know that there's some conferences that are out there that I would like to attend to. And I know that last year, I think, or the year before, you went to one in Texas.
I did go to one in Texas, and I have to look up the name of that conference. I meant to do it yesterday, but she has it every year. Uh,
Mhm.
it's a conference for African American authors, and I think
Okay.
I had heard about it for years, and sometimes I would allow some of my books to be promoted on their website, and it was a big leap for me to go to Texas because you have to think about the cost of the ticket. I had to buy a suitcase so I could ship my books out there with my promo. It was expensive to do that. I had to get a hotel room. All of this was more expensive than what I actually made from the sale of the books. But I wanted to go and see what it was like, make some contacts. My sister lives out there, so she was able to come and help me out. I would encourage new authors not to do that.
Okay.
Um, take advantage of things that are local until you can see. Then this is my, learn from my experiences if you like. But until you can see some profit, don't spend all your resources
I gotcha.
because you haven't found a niche yet to make a profit. So it's very easy to just start spending money. The publishing company says they'll put you on the radio. They say that they'll take your book and they'll advertise it to all the teachers. They'll do this. They'll even tell you they'll put it in front of movie producers, and you pay $5,000-$10,000 and they'll pitch it to a big movie producer. But what they don't tell you is there's no guarantee that you will get anything from what we sell you. It's
Right.
a gamble. And I always try to say, don't go in that direction. The best way to handle, in my experience, is when we get out of COVID and we're able to actually meet people, go to conferences, festivals, things like that. Try to build, demand for your book first, and then go out to Texas and things like that. But I wanted to see what it was like, and it was quite an experience with over 200 African American authors all selling their books. It was interesting to say the least.
Okay. All right, cool. So let's talk about writers that we admire. Now, as far as adult writers and other writers, I'm all over the place with, writers and the work. As long as I'm interested, as long as the topic is interesting to me, and I've been reading all my life. And, I've read from Maya Angelou, Zora Neale Hurston, Zane, Terry McMillan, those are my younger years, of course.
Yeah.
And so, now, we have Michelle Obama, we have Jill Parker Rhodes, who wrote Ghost Boys. And then, I read Joyce Myers and T.D. Jakes. So I'm all over the place as long as it, as long as it interests me, but as far as young children's books, I enjoy those books with a repeated tagline, if you will, because, this is what I try to mimic, in my writing. And I think, kids, they kind of, they're engaged, whenever there's a tagline that they can remember. Because, little JJ, he goes around the house, saying, Grandma, I got this. Grandma, I got this. He knows that tagline, right? He knows that tagline. And so, in terms of one of my favorite books of mine, and of course, I didn't really start reading children's books until, JJ was born, and he loves the book Brown Bear, What Do You See? And it has, a little rhyme to it, that he loves, and it goes, Brown Bear, what do you see? I see a red bird looking at me. Red bird, what do you see? I see a yellow duck looking at me. Yellow duck, what do you see? And so, he just likes that. But I enjoy it too, because you can have a rhythm, you can have fun with it, and you can play with it, So, what are some writers that you admire?
Too. I think what you have cited is very important to engage young readers because, they're engaged by the melodious sound of the words. They're engaged by the rhythmic sound of the words. You can almost dance to it as well as read it. And they're engaged by the rhyming of the words, which is critical for emerging readers to have all of that. And the simplicity of it. It's the hook. And,
Mhm.
I got this. It's the hook. And that's critical. And for persons of color, children of color, when I was growing up, I can promise you, I never read a book that where the characters looked like me. Never. It wasn't
Mhm.
until I was much, much older. But I did read a book as probably when my daughter was very young, The Velveteen Rabbit. And
Mhm.
Rabbit was written a long time ago. I think we looked it up, and it was like in 1920s by Marjorie Williams. And I've always been captivated by themes, and I've always liked books, whereas the theme is for everybody. And I love this book. My daughter loved the book, and I just have a short excerpt from it. And it reads, "You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily or have sharp edges or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in your joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all because once you are real, you can't be ugly except to people who don't understand."
Mm.
In that children's book,
Mm.
the love of the little boy for his rabbit, even after
Mm.
the rabbit becomes shabby and
No.
old, teaches such a lesson about what it means to be a real person and to identify love in the sense of not how you look, but how you have been loved. And if you have been loved, those things just reflect how hard someone has loved you. It is a beautiful story, and I
No.
love stories that are disguised as children's stories, but they teach a lesson for
You're
all
gonna
of us.
make me cry again, Doc Bev.
Well, I tell you, Velveteen Rabbit is, as I think
So
every
beautiful.
parent should teach that book at every level of their child's life
Mm.
throughout adulthood.
Right.
And another
That's so
book that
sweet.
I like, a newer book that I used in my children's church ministry at Miracle Tabernacle is When God Made You. And that is
Yes.
a delightful book by
Yes.
Matthew Paul Turner. You probably have that one for JJ. I love
Yes.
that story
Yes.
also. Great message there. Again,
Yep.
stories that have great themes, great positive characters, disguised as children's books, but really, they're for everybody.
Yes. And speaking of that, so Doc Bev, both of okay, so we have something else in common, okay? We're educators, or we were educators, but we're still educators, even though we're not in that role, right? Once a teacher, always a teacher, right? And
Right.
so I taught business and technology, and of course, you taught English. You were English teacher, and so with my experience with engaging students in reading, since I taught business and technology, that class was considered an encore class or an elective class, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of our reading was interactive, meaning, was hands-on. And, I asked the students, their opinion about a lot of things because of the nature of my class. Children were very interested in businesses, that they were familiar with, like Nike and Starbucks and McDonald's, and all of that. And so, reading, of course, was incorporated into the assignments every day. But I found also, and this is so true, that unless a child is interested, they're not gonna like to read.
That's
It's
true.
just, it is just that plain and just that simple. And so that's what I saw, in my classroom. And so, in discussion time, we had to have discussion time because I needed to know, hey, what do you think? All right,
Yeah.
what are you thinking right now? Have you been to these businesses? Have you, had an experience, whatever. So, engaging
Yeah.
kids in reading and just making it fun and, and exciting is so very important. What you think?
Yes, I agree 100%. When I was teaching English, a question that I would raise to my students is this, and I still think it's a nice question for discussion.
Mhm.
Um, is a person who can read and chooses not to read any
Mm.
better off than a person who can't read?
Mm. That's
And
deep. Mhm.
it is, but it's a good question to raise because what good does it do to have an ability to do something
Mhm.
and you never use it?
Right.
Are you any better off than the person who does not have that ability?
Mhm.
So I raised that question with the students to talk about, you know, why was it so important to learn how to read? And why is it important to continue reading? One thing, you heard me say also that I did not see characters that look like me. I'm
Mhm.
considerably older than I feel like everybody in the world these days, but I did not see characters that look like me. And for our children of color, it's important to have high interest materials for them to read. And also, it's important that they have diversity
Mhm.
in those books that you are putting in front of them. The classics are wonderful,
Yeah.
but children need to build self-esteem. In my community, I never saw African American doctor. I never saw African Americans doing things in professional ways outside of teaching. But in literature, you don't want to limit what kids see in literature. Now they have the whole world in front of them.
Right.
So why not put books in front of them that show persons of color doing wonderful things and in leadership roles?
Yeah, and I think you're right because the world today, especially this last year, with racial injustice and all of that, more African American authors are coming out.
Yeah,
More diverse authors are coming out, and you are seeing, books about children's books about natural hair and about how special they are and what they can do or whatever. So I think that is changing. I think that is changing. But you are so right about that. And I think back on my childhood. Okay, I think back on my childhood, and to be honest with you, there were not a lot of books in my home. I had all the baby dolls in the world, but as far as a book, I could read, but
right,
I didn't have that love of books like I do now. It just for me it just started, and
right.
so then also too I think about my relatives and I think about my friends and those who have children, and in the Black family, we are not investing, in books and in literature, and I think that is so important. And so I didn't feel like it was important until I had JJ, right?
Yeah,
And so I have books. We have books everywhere in every room in the whole house. You can find a book. And so, I wanted to make sure that, he likes to read and that he can read and that there's a joy because, if you can't read, then there's a lot of things you won't be able to do. You know what I mean?
oh,
You'll have even in your other classes, even in just life, period, it's hard, not to, want to read, not to learn, how to read, so I just, I think that is important. You're right. That is very important.
I think that we look at the statistics. You taught in public schools, and so did I. And we
Mhm.
know that there's a phrase that's been going around for generations, actually decades, closing the achievement gap. Closing the
Mm,
achievement gap in reading. It's always been there. I was looking at some statistics, and I think you were also, that
mhm.
showed recently as last year, we still have 84% of our African American children in fourth grade
Right.
who are not reading at proficiency, meaning
Right.
only about 18% are. And
That is correct.
when
Yeah.
you look at the percentages there, African American male children lag behind the African American female children. So we really have a lot to do with closing the achievement gap. If it is going to be closed, it can't be done by teachers alone. It has to be done at home. Reading has to start before the child is born. And I think you probably can talk about how you read to JJ before he was born, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yep,
starts lifelong experience with reading while they're still in the womb. And
that is
parents
true.
need to make sure that books that represent their child are everywhere. Wherever the
Mhm.
child goes, there should be books. If it's in the
Yes,
daycare, if it's in the church, if it's in the home, the schools, make sure that your child is reflected in the literature that is put in front of your child to read. Um, Make sure that at home the child sees you reading
right.
and not just telling him or her to read a book.
That's
The
right.
reading should be fun and part of the family experience for everybody. That way, children are saying, "This is what we do in my house.
That's
This is
right.
the way we bond together." And I always say, you'll be surprised, surprised, surprised what your child is thinking when you sit at that table and start talking to the child about those characters. They can't
Yes.
help bring their feelings and ideas and all of their experiences into the discussion.
That is correct. I was reading an article in NBC News,
Uh-huh.
and um, it stated, let me find it. It stated that unfortunately, reading is not connected to the interest or lived experiences of many Black children. For example, Black boys, like all boys, enjoy funny, silly, and gross books like The Diary of a Wimpy Kid or Captain Underpants. Not only are these books not used for instructional purposes, but in some classrooms and homes, adults prohibit or actively discourage Black boys from reading books that are considered non-academic. So the popular slavery and segregation books that many teachers and librarians enjoy reading to Black children may be useful for lessons, but oppression narratives do little to inspire Black children to read for fun. And so we got to find a way in order, to make sure for our Black children to understand that reading can be fun. And it's not just about reading about slavery or, like you said, those traditional books. They're good and everything, but we have to find out what engages them and what makes them want to read.
That is so true.
Yeah.
I I love to see kids uh, reading and talking about the books. And we think about book clubs as something that adults do, but book clubs can be something that your child is involved in. And
Mm-hmm.
many of these books that are out now are excellent for children to bond together. You can sponsor a book club with your child and his friends. It doesn't have to be 10 people in the book club.
That's a
It
good
can be
idea.
2 or 3, but
Yeah.
make sure that everybody comes together and they have a book and the child is involved. Another thing
Mm-hmm.
that we notice also is that some children don't want to read because they think they have to be still the whole time.
Yeah.
They're reading chapter books by the time they're in 3rd grade, and let's just face it, boys are tagged with not being still. They are more energetic, but I think girls want to move around also. So
Mm-hmm.
incorporate movement. Don't
Yeah.
just make the child sit.
Yeah.
Let them sit, let them move around and do some activities, but you have to appeal to the natural instinct of your child. If the
That's right.
child likes to dance, well, let them dance for a little bit and then let them breathe some and then let them get up and do some movement. All of that, instead of repressing the
Mm.
natural instincts of a child, use the natural instincts of the child to really help them to dig into learning, because learning is a natural instinct also. It's just
Yeah.
that sometimes we don't give it what it needs to blossom.
Right.
And really sometimes by 3rd or 4th grade, we see that it is not blossoming in many of our children. And we don't want that to happen.
That's right. And so, for those of you who are listening to us, those educators out there, and those parents, we must spend more time asking ourselves how to help children identify as readers instead of creating test prep regimens.
Mhm.
This testing, that goes on or whatever. We have to, just find a way to reach them. It's that
That's
important.
right.
Yep. Well, Doc Bev, we are almost out of time.
Oh
We're almost out of
no.
time. And before we go, how can people purchase your book and contact you?
All right. Well, people can purchase any of my books by going to online retailers. That would be, of course, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Amazon. You can also directly contact me at my website, which is beverlyboone.com. You can email me at bevboone.com, and you can give me a call if you want to set up an opportunity to get a book for your child. I'll be glad to give you a personal autographed book. You can just give me a call at 843-504-5408. Sorry, my clock is going off in the background
It's
there.
okay.
But lots of opportunities to contact me, and I welcome all contacts.
Yes, and like I said, everyone, I recommend Life is Like a Tootsie Roll Pop. All
I
right. So
become
make
your
sure you
favorite.
go and you purchase Doc Bev's book. But also, too, make sure if you haven't already, or for even for someone else, purchase Grandma I Got This, and you can go to online book retailers as well. You can go to my website, visit my website at authorterryhillstarks.com, and you can also email me at grandmaigotthis@gmail.com. All right. So that is our contact information. And please like and follow Grandma I Got This on Facebook. And you can like and follow Doc Bev. You know, you have an Instagram and a Facebook account as well.
I do.
So
I
just
do.
go and and check her out. An amazing lady. But before we go, Doc Bev, one takeaway. What is one takeaway? What is one piece of advice for an inspiring author?
I think if I could give that one piece of advice, it would be to write. There's an old saying that perfection is the enemy of good. Some people
Mhm.
don't like to write because it's not perfect. They don't think it looks right, sounds right. But if you want to be a swimmer, you have to swim. If you want to be a writer, you have to write. So I would say start writing, and from that, everything else will be revealed to you as to what kind of story you're going to write, how much work you're willing to put into it. And you might decide, I love it. And you might decide that, I want to be a poet and not a short story writer, or I like
Mm.
plays, or I like, doing some other things. You just have to jump in and start doing it. And while I talking about that, I want to support Grandma. I Got This. I love the story. I love the book. I have it. And I also want to thank you for this opportunity, and to thank April Gardner as well for all of her support, and many, many other people whose names I cannot call, but I appreciate you, because
Yes,
it takes a support to do
yes,
anything, and I've gotten a lot of support here in Myrtle Beach.
yes, yes. Thank you, Dr. Bev. And as
Thank
far
you.
as one piece of advice that I can give to aspiring authors is do you. Okay, don't get overwhelmed and don't get caught up in all this social media and looking at other authors and seeing what they're doing, and because that can get overwhelming and it can get depressing, because sometimes you don't think that you're at a level where you need to be. But of course, being an author is a journey, and so this is what I've had to learn. This is the most important, that I've had to learn, is that we all have different books, we're writing differently, we're different people, and so we have different paths. And so what God has for you is for you, and what he has for me is for me.
That's right. Amen to that.
And again, Doc Bev, just thank you. You know that I love you. And April Garner out there, she's behind the scenes. She is just amazing. And I just appreciate all of her support as well.
This has been great. The time has gone by too fast.
I know, right? All right. So those of you out there, we appreciate you and we thank you for tuning in. And we look forward to some many more author to authors. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye, Doc
Thank
Bev.
you. Bye bye.